David Glover, also known as the controversial counselor. David Glover.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm about to get you introduced. He's had a very successful record of positively influencing both his clients and students in his 22 years in the education and counseling fields. In the tradition of the straight-talking counselors, Glover gives his clients and students what they need rather than what they want to hear. A native of Niagara Falls, New York, Glover graduated from Niagara University with a master's in counseling education. He currently resides in Baltimore, Maryland. Cocktail Conversations is by far an enjoyable read and causes its readers to feel a myriad of emotions, from sadness to anger to disgust to laughter to celebration. David Glover is a talented and gifted author, and I look forward to his next literary project. That's from Jasmine Lady Jazz Best, KLJN 107.7 radio. So welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, the author of Cocktail Conversations, Mr. David Glover. David, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. As they say, no need to complain. We are still on top of the grass.
That's the most important thing.
I know that's right. And we just came through Thanksgiving. And like I said earlier, for me, I don't need one day to be thankful. I'm grateful all the time. So I'm just glad to be alive. So with that being said, I'm also glad and grateful that you were able to take me up on my offer, given that we had the opening this morning that came about and you and I had just started talking. And so you were flexible enough to join me. So thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. I'm always looking for a platform to just, get my, information out there.
I know that's right, because that's really, at this point, that's what it's all about. I posted something the other day about, if you're trying to get away from the old 9 to 5, there's a whole bunch of different steps that you need to do, and getting on the platforms is one of them. So I'll tell you what, I'll take the listening audience. Let me tell you how this came about. I put a post on LinkedIn and all my social media sites that I'm actually looking for guest bloggers on my blog, The Critical Thinker. So David hit me back and said, tell me a little bit about what The Critical Thinker is about. So when I shared with him what The Critical Thinker is about, he said, that sounds like something I teach and I do with my students and I wrote a book about. So at that point I said, wrote a book? Well, immediately hit him back up and said, would you like to be a guest on the show? I'll get you scheduled. That's how we started going back and forth. And lo and behold, today became available. And that's how I hit him back and said, look, are you willing to do today? And he graciously said yes. So we are going to be talking about his book, Cocktail Conversations. And we're also going to be talking about this whole notion of critical thinking and counseling and education and all of this. So let somebody know that we're on the air. Tell them if they want to hear us live, because I am recording it as well. But if they want to hear us live, they need to go to gobrave.org. Or if they're in northern New Jersey area, the New York area, they can catch us on FM radio 88.7 FM. So, all right, David, let's roll the clock back a little bit in terms of how did you wind up going down this counseling road? Where did this all begin? Is that something you were always interested in, or how did you wind up into counseling?
Well, it's kind of ironic that when I was younger, I was always the type that kind of would help out the underdog. Like if we were growing up and it was a child or one of our peers that other people maybe picked on or they made fun of, for some reason I always gravitated toward that individual and would kind of help them out and kind of let them know that I'm on your side. It could be me and you against the world, because I never wanted anyone to feel pain like that. So I never really tolerated bullying or someone being totally against a bunch of people kind of isolating another individual and making fun of them. So I always kind of took on those type of roles growing up. But I really didn't know that was my passion until I got to college, because before that I was always saying, of course, I wanted to be into business, so I went to high school. I took marketing courses, majored in marketing, but that just didn't cut it for me. And then maybe in my sophomore year, I switched over to a social science major. I started taking psychology and sociology classes, political science, I got jobs like being peer counselors and residential assistants and things of that nature. So it kind of how I slid into the counseling field. Then when I graduated from Niagara University, I became a social worker. So from that point on, I've always held jobs in that area.
So in terms of, so your counseling piece started out in social work. So it's not as if you're in a school like a guidance counselor or anything. You're actually counseling from the social work side. Oh,
I am actually a department chair of school counseling.
Okay. So it is in the school. All right. So in terms of, and that's interesting. We have some things in common, particularly what you were saying about the business piece, because undergrad and college, that's what I did as well in terms of a business admin major with a concentration in marketing. And I actually went into the corporate world for 15 years before I came back out and back into education. And so that I can definitely relate to when you said, just wasn't doing it for me. I can definitely relate because I had that same experience. So talk to me a little bit about now. I'm looking here in your bio, and you said you don't counsel in terms of what folks might want to hear. You tell them what they need. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I always kind of took on like the non-traditional kind of approach, and I kind of took on that approach because one of my mentors at the time at Niagara University, his name was Anthony Miller. He was like our NUOP counselor. That's the Niagara University Opportunity Program. So he worked with me like on a regular basis as far as mentoring, and he kind of hit us on the head. Like it wasn't that, and I could just remember going back to one time facing like academic probation, and I had a meeting with the whole committee, and it was one of those things that they wanted to know, was I sure I wanted to be at Niagara University? So I was kind of trying to be nonchalant, kind of cool, like one-word answers. So then after the meeting, he kind of ripped me a new one. Can't say everything he said, but it kind of definitely hit me in the head, and I went back to my room, and I actually, cried. I'm like, I got to do better. And then from that moment forth, I really put in the energy and effort I needed to do, and I would report back to him with, like, my grades of how I did on tests and papers, and he was kind of like, I don't know why you coming to me with this. Like, it doesn't shock me. And he would really, kind of cuss me out, get me going. I don't do that much. He took it a little further because, it was a different age.
Right.
During that time, and I was, able to, take accountability and never let them words impact me because I know he was just trying to set a fire under me.
Right.
It definitely worked. So.
No, one of the things that struck me with that, because that's not always easy to tell people what they need to hear compared to what they want to hear. I mean, you really have to be, sometimes you have to be brutally honest with folks, like you were saying your mentor did. And that's not always easy to give that kind of feedback. Yet, at the same time, that's the feedback that will get you the desired result. And a lot of people really don't want people to be square with them. They really don't. They want people to tell them what they want to hear. But if you're really going to do your most good, you got to give folks what they really need.
Yes, and that's the kind of approach that I took. Now, granted, every student or client is unique and different in their own way, so you kind of got to know I always say from the sports terminology, KYP, know your personnel. So you kind of got to know who you're dealing with in front of you. But those students that you know that you can give them what they need and kind of have a different kind of non-traditional approach, they seem to take that approach well because they'll say in a minute, like, he's being real. You're not phony or fake. Like, he's going to, if I'm having a bad day, they'll know I'm going to have a bad day because we vibed and connected like that. So we just keep it real, and those conversations are the best ones.
No, they really are. And I know I'm in a position now where I have to evaluate or observe teachers. And even for me sometimes it's hard to give like a teacher that's struggling like some really tough feedback and say, look, you know what, you're really not hitting the mark here. This is, try these, try that, try this, try. And it's even sometimes hard for me to take it from my supervisor telling me. But again, if you really want to have the most impact, those are the kind of conversations that you have to have. Even with friends, if you have a true friend is not always going to, as my pastor can say, massage you in your mess. They're not always going to just keep on allowing you to go down a road that they know is wrong. And back to what you were talking about, accountability. A true friend really is going to hold you accountable versus somebody that's just kind of, going to let you keep on going down the wrong path.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's why when you get older and you're able to have those conversations, you kind of weed out who your true friends are and who can actually take what you're dishing out and vice versa. The ones who can't handle it, they seem to, they go off in the sunset their own way and find someone else who's going to massage that mess.
Right. Well, and you're absolutely right. Folks like that who really can't take the brutal, honest truth. Can't take it for what it is. That's exactly what they do. They move along till they find somebody that's going to keep on stroking them, that's going to keep on telling them what they want to hear. But in the meantime, telling them what they want to hear is not really in their best interest, and they don't realize that. That's why you as a counselor working with students, students sometimes really don't realize that what the teachers and the counselors and the principals and the administrators and everybody trying to really is in the long run for their best interests.
Definitely.
They don't connect those dots. And I work with kids every day from grade 2 to grade 8. And the lower grade kids, they're little. The second, third, fourth graders, they're little. They just love to be in school. But when we start getting into that middle school age, that 6, 7, 8, it is a struggle to get them to connect the dots between why you got to get your education now of what the benefit is going to be later.
Yeah, and they always say that is the most, as far as in counseling and probably just in reality, period. They always say that's the most purest form of counseling, the middle school kids. That's when you're really doing your work because, they can go in between, bounce between. Are they elementary acting at one point, and then some of them act more older, so you got them in between, and it's how you have to kind of mold and shape them to get them in the right direction. They can go either way.
No, that's true.
Definitely a battle.
And you're down in Baltimore, so you appreciate what I'm talking about in terms of when they say urban areas. The school that I serve is in the urban of urban. It is urban to the second power. And there are some kids, there's one young man that comes to mind, and I told him the other day, we're intentionally focusing on you because we know if we don't, like you just said, it could go either way. Either the street is going to get you or we're going to get you. And we could see this young man, he's conflicted. He wants to do the right thing, but at the same time, he knows if he's seen as soft in the street, it could cost him his life. So he's conflicted. So you're right. In terms of some counseling, depending on where you are, counseling is even more important depending on the community that you're serving in some instances. True,
yeah. And I always remember touching upon what you had said earlier, that I remember it was one, and this was a high school student, and she was top of the line, like valedictorian. She went on to go to a Ivy League school, but she had said something that always resonated in my mind and in my heart. She said, Mr. Glover, she was like, I don't remember much of anything in U.S. history and some of those other courses. What I remember the most being here is the conversations that you and I had along with some of our other teachers. She said, those life lessons that you told me will last me a lifetime. I won't remember anything in U.S. history.
Absolutely.
Or social studies or anything like that. She said, but I always will remember the conversations we had. So, it's real, and I will always remember that. That was just so deep and profound.
You're absolutely right. And see, that's what keeps me in the business. Because there are days whenever I want to say, you know what, enough is enough. But a feedback or running into a student saying something like that is what keeps me in the business. And that's absolutely right. Because interestingly enough, or ironically enough, you're in the Baltimore area. I had the opportunity to hear your congressman speak at a luncheon a couple weeks ago, Elijah Cummings.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And what Representative Cummings said was, as a child, he was a special ed student. And he said it was a guidance counselor and teacher who was able to help him understand how he could get out of being a special ed student. And he shared that story with the audience about how it was the guidance counselor that told him, you can get out of this. And the teacher told him the same thing. He said, but these are the things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to study more. You're going to have to read more. You're going to have to practice your math more, so forth and so on. And he said he did it. He went to the library every night, and he'd pass his friends who were playing baseball and football. And he went to the library every night. Sometime would be there till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. But ultimately, he got out. But he attributed that to that guidance counselor.
Wow. Nice story. Nice testament.
Yes, absolutely right. I was sitting there like, because I mean, he was sharing because he's one of the most powerful folks in Congress down there. But he shared with how he was a special ed student, how it was the guidance counselor who really helped him to get out of it, tell him what he needed. Now he did his part. Now that's the other piece because I shared the story with the kids in school, and I said, but let me give you the kicker on this story. He did his part. He didn't just say he wanted to get out of special ed and didn't do anything. He did his part. He went to the library, he studied, so forth and so on. But see, again, your counselee has to be willing to be counseled and follow the directions.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times people don't understand that. I always say to people, I don't go out. I can't go out looking for kids or looking for business. The kids that really want the help and willing to follow up with your suggestions are the ones that come seek you out.
Right.
And they know that there's a deficit going on in their world that they have to change, but they may just need a little Kickstarter to get going. And then once they start finding some success, they'll keep coming back to you, and you'll build your relationship based on that.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. For those in the listening audience, if you just joined me, my guest is David Glover, and he's also known as the controversial counselor. And what we're talking about in the beginning of the interview, we're talking about the whole counseling relationship and notion to begin with. And we're going to work our way into how he became the controversial counselor as well as an author. So matter of fact, I'm going to shift into that right now. So your byline or your tag name is the controversial counselor. How did that come about?
That was interesting how that came about, because I started from my I taught a critical thinking class at Bryant and Stratton College, and once I relocated and moved to Baltimore, it was one of my buddies. We started off, he was a science teacher, and we started off the same year at the school, and we were always talking about, trying to build our brand, trying to do something different or identify ourselves as something other than just a Baltimore County employee. So I had told him how I used to teach a critical thinking class, and I said, man, I really enjoyed that class. So we decided to make it into an afternoon club, like extracurricular club after school. So we had, like the valedictorian, salutatorian, the student government president, all of them came to that club because they felt like, okay, this is really connected to our lives, and they wanted to be a part of that. So needless to say, he ended up leaving the school, and I still had yearn for those discussions. So at that time, I had jumped on social media, and I started posting like scenarios and day-to-day situations regarding, relationships, education, family, friendship, things of that nature, and I got a positive response. So, and with the stories, I would change the names and kind of embellish some of the things in there. And one day, my brother, I always tell the story. He came over and he was like, kind of like, where the hell you get these stories from? and I was like, you can't make them up. And then he was like, man, he's like, that's crazy. He said, why don't you write a book? And I said, I'm not much of a writer. And then he said, no, actually, you've always been creative with like stories and stuff. So I was like, write a book. He said, because you already have all the information
right
here. You got people responding to you. As a counselor, you can give your feedback. So I started thinking like, wow. And then I was like, well, coming out as David Glover, they'll just say, okay, who is David Glover? Is he related to Danny Glover? I said, that's not going to cut it. So I wanted something else a little more catchy. So then I was like, maybe the controversial counselor. He was like, yeah, because you always like, stirring the pot or kind of instigating
right.
something and provoking people. So I end up saying, hey, the controversial counselor. So I kind of been living by that alias of trying to, give people thought-provoking conversations, and I know how to poke the bear, and I kind of use some of my regular counseling skills, and I kind of draw emotions out, so it's just been fitting for me, the controversial counselor.
So yeah, that's where David and I connected. I just told you when we began in the introduction, that's where we connected, because my blog is The Critical Thinker, and the intent of the blog was kind of based on that whole notion, like Seinfeld did years ago. He said it was, his show was a show about nothing, but at the same time, it would kind of like you were looking at things that nobody really thought about, they took for granted, and like he just said, poke the bear with it. And you throw it out there, and I mean, I've had people really like come at me like, oh, you just want us to agree with you. Like, no, I don't care if you agree with me or not. I mean, I just want you to think about something that you probably didn't think about had I not brought it to your attention.
Exactly. And I've had a lot of people they come from my throat. And
yeah, exactly.
Kind of like smirk, like this is not bothering me, whatever, because it doesn't make me no difference at the end of the day what your thought is. And I don't even really necessarily think this way. You just don't know it.
Right. And see, that like, I'll throw something in the blog post. I'll throw something in the blog. Again, it's something that, maybe folks just, you bypass it every day. It's almost like you see it so much that you don't see it. So what I do is kind of put a stop sign on there and kind of make you look at it and then force you to make an opinion one way or the other. But that's what I'm saying. A lot of people think, oh, well, you just want us to think like you're thinking. Like, no. If you think the other way, fine. But, at least give whatever the topic is some thought. Now, interestingly enough, as an educator, if you're working with kids or in a school or in any educational setting, and I laugh whenever you said a couple minutes ago, like, no, I'm not an author, but no, we can write volumes. And like you're correct, we cannot make this stuff up. On any given day in any school setting, you just would not believe the various scenarios that come up. And they are book worthy. And so it was just a matter, I'm sure, of, okay, putting your thoughts together and then getting it down on paper. So what was that experience like for you in terms of, because some in my listening audience feel they have a book in them, they just don't know where to start. Did you self-publish? Did you go through a publishing house? What was your process?
Well, I actually went through, I was working with a publicist at the time, and she kind of gave me the lowdown because my revised book I ended up self-publishing, but before that she called it a vanity publishers when you have like Ex Libris and some of the other ones. I can't even think of their names. She said, but their goal is to make money off of you. They give you this big comprehensive plan and say that they're going to do this, they're going to do that.
Right.
And meanwhile, you just want to get a book out there and you're kind of excited and kind of, feeling good about yourself, but then once you get into it, you realize they didn't do what they actually said they were going to do. But with me, because I had been putting my stuff out there for so long, I kind of got a lot of sales and volumes just based on social media, whereas other people, if you don't utilize that, then you kind of going to be stuck in the mud. You're going to make this money, and you may sell one book every couple months or whatever the case is. But so I went through that. But then once I got the publicist, she kind of looked at my book, and she was like, wow. She said, I thought this book was going to be more comical. She said, but actually it's some deep scenarios in here that I think we need to scale down and revise it because people can only take so much information. She was like, it's just like if you're at a buffet, you're going to get little bits and pieces at the time. You're going to get little bit pieces at one time. At one time, you just can't keep heaping up all this information is hard for people to digest.
Right.
Scaled it down, the revised copy, and I published that one, self-published that one.
So again, like I was saying, in terms of now, oddly enough, because while you were talking, I went back in some of my archives on my blog, and I'm going back to like around this time, whenever I started it. It was like a post that I did in 2008, and it was about this whole notion of Black Friday. Now, me personally, you're not going to find me out trying to shop anywhere on anybody's Black Friday, but there are those who love it. But back in December of 2008, I wrote a blog post, and it was, there isn't that much to shop for in the world. And the line starts off with, can you imagine someone losing his or her life for foolishness? And this was at the time a Walmart employee had actually gotten killed trying to open the door, got ran over. So like I'm using that as an example, and if you go to the blog itself and you go through the years, you'll see a lot of different, as you say, controversial topics that, like you said, that go for you. Like for me, I'm not a proponent of ripped jeans, so I will constantly question folks on, can you kind of help me understand the thinking behind wearing clothes, not just wearing, but buying, that you're going to actually go to the store and you're going to buy something that's already, for lack of a better term, already damaged. So I'll throw something like that out there, and man, I get all kinds of hits.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, again, look, I'm not necessarily trying to persuade you to stop wearing your jeans, but I do want you to think about something. Did you ever think about that that's something that's already damaged when you bought it? Did you ever think about, as an African American, the history behind jeans and why they were worn, and when historically as African American wore ripped jeans because they didn't have anything else? Did you ever think in those terms? That's what I like to do. That's what, in terms of you talking about poking the bear, that's kind of like the way I like to poke the bear.
And I'm kind of on the same lines. It's just something that, like you said, something so small, and I always tell people little things lead to big things.
Exactly.
Maybe the great John Wooden said that or something. But to those terms, and it's just the little things. But also, when I put out the scenarios, I always tell people that, we spend a lot of money, they do a lot of research, and they always talk about, what's going on in the community, society. And I say, but before we could be effective in that, we have situations and scenarios in-house.
I know that's right.
That we can't handle. So how do we expect that we have all this dysfunction in a home, then we go out into a meeting and we're supposed to represent our community well, schools well, when we can't even handle issues in a home with 4 or 5 people living there? And I said, so we have to start talking about these situations on a day-to-day basis and become better people. And we're all working hard. I said, I'm not. People always like, oh, you think you're the expert in this?
Right.
No expert.
Right.
I just like have the ability to try to get these conversations going.
That's exactly right. But it's a point well taken. That how do you now become the community organizer or the leader or whatever when you're not even leading in your place? There's a disconnect there, and I have dealt with people like that. I have dealt with parents like that, in terms of they will come in and they are a parent advocate and they trying to run everything, but their house all jacked up. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's like, I'm not trying to judge you, but at least that, like, back to the thinking part of it, at least give it some thought. Like, you know what? There is something to that. Maybe I will try to get my house in order. But
again, it's those little things.
No, you're absolutely right. So in terms of when you were teaching the course, I mean, was it like a debate course, or kind of like, how was the course set up? Like a critical thinking course, how was that set up when you were teaching it at the college level?
The way I had it set up, and it was someone who taught it opposite, and it was a total difference, because everybody who had the other teacher on the other days, they were like, and I worked at a college, so I was okay with them sometimes calling me David or
right.
something like that. And they were like, David, can we get in your class?
Right.
Because we're just sitting there reading magazine articles, but I heard your class is like off the chain.
Right.
So I would go through and give them notes, and, I would have different discussion things like videos, and we would just talk, and I kind of facilitate it, but I kind of let them run the class, and I was more refereeing or throwing stuff out there to kind of get them going, and they loved the class. Some of them said, I don't care what goes on Tuesday and Thursday,
right.
I'm there because I need this, and this is the first class that I took that actually I had to look at my life
right.
and realize I had to make changes. So that was my whole thing, just giving them, trying to make sure it was something that they could connect with in their lives, and they ran with that.
You know, interestingly enough, that's what one of the challenges we're having with like the lower grade teachers in the elementary school is to allow students to do that. Because the teachers who do, you're absolutely right. The kids are the same way. That's the class they want to go to. That's their favorite class. Because everybody wants to have some voice. They want to have voice, and they want to have the opportunity to express themselves.
Yeah, and I had to, sometimes you're just up there talking, and no one's participating. I actually, had to tell students, okay, now I heard enough from you. Let this person talk because they're typically more quiet, but they have their hands up, and you're dominating this whole conversation. And I was like, you need to chill for a minute.
That's absolutely right. You always get the dominant person or the stronger ones, and then you get the quiet ones just to kind of lay back. But you're right. I want to hear from everybody. Mm-hmm. But now, so talk a little bit, because your book is titled Cocktail Conversations. How did you come up with the title?
That title was kind of, my thought process was with that was growing up, and my buddies, and we used to feel like, okay, we can't wait till the weekend. We can't wait till
right.
so much stuff that happened during the week that Friday and Saturday can't get here soon enough. And we would call ourselves having little sessions. I'm not going to tell you what everything the sessions included,
right.
But
enough said. Message received.
Yeah, we would, get together and kind of talk. So when I started thinking about these situations, I'm like, man, it's almost like you when people say, oh, I need a drink or whatever.
Right.
We got to meet up. We got to talk. I need a drink. So I just said they were cocktail conversations. Like some of the stuff you almost have to have something to get through the conversation because the stuff is just like, have you shaking your head like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe this went on. So I just called it Cocktail Conversations. Not literally like you actually have to have one, but it seems like the illusion may be that you need something to be able to get through that conversation.
Well, and it's interesting that that's the way you see it, as like you need. I kind of saw it as, these are the conversations you have, like you said, when you hang out, when you with your boys or your girls or whatever, just over cocktails, like not necessarily that you needed to get through it, but just it's that kind of, and I don't think, and maybe they do, I don't know, because times have changed so much. I don't know if enough people get an opportunity to just chill like that, to just chill and talk. Maybe we do. Maybe I just don't know. I don't know. But I could honestly, whenever I saw the title of it, I envisioned somebody just having a good conversation. I just wonder if people just have plain old thought-provoking conversations anymore. And
you know what? I think as I see and stroll through social media, I think people are trying to have that. I just don't know if they as I always say to people, as the younger people say, like the rappers, that they got bars, and I equate that to content. I'm like, I got content for days on conversations, so I have the information to put out there that we can talk for hours and hours.
Right.
But for the most part, with social media and the devices that we have, that people are utilizing that instead of having those face-to-face thought-provoking conversations.
And see, that's a good
point.
point.
Actually look in somebody's eyes and know, like, okay, they're being genuine instead of texting and emailing and whatever the case is.
That's a very good point, and why it may feel or seem as if folks are not having conversations like you're describing, that they're doing it on social media. Mm-hmm. And, funny, it's interestingly enough, that would bear out to what a lot of, the research is showing. And you don't even have to look at research. You can just go to a restaurant. It's one of the oddest things to me, and every now and again I fall into the trap myself, is to see a family sitting at the table and everybody has their cell phone out.
Yeah.
Like everybody, and you're at the dinner, you're in a restaurant, you're at dinner, and everybody is on their own. They might even be texting the person sitting next to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, so that would kind of bear out what you're saying in terms of why we may not be having the conversation, because we don't put the electronics down. That might even be something worth throwing out there on the critical thinker just to kind of mess with some folks. But in any event, I know I have like some guys that I grew up with, and what we try to do is at least once a quarter, the 4 or 5 of us try to get together and go out to a restaurant and do exactly what you're describing in terms of having those cocktail conversations and about whatever topic comes up. And it is a wonderful time whenever we get a chance to do that. And we haven't kept to our schedule. It's time for us to do it again. We haven't kept to our schedule. But it's something to that, being able to have those honest conversations like that. It really is.
It's powerful, and there's memories that come out of it, and there's other things that it could be, networking opportunities. You can be going through frustrations, and you may speak on that, and one of your friends say, oh, well, I just spoke with somebody who had a similar situation, or they're helping people out do this. I'm going to let them know about you, and then, maybe y'all can collaborate. So it's a great networking opportunity, these conversations as well.
No, it really is. And for those of you who are listening to David and I talk, I mean, if you don't do that, I really would encourage you to at some point put down the electronic. My wife declares out that I spend more time on my phone and iPad than I do with her. I don't think is necessarily true, but at the same time, I understand where she's coming from. But it's the same thing with our friends and associates and coworkers and everything, that we really do need to have. And again, back to what David said in his bio, sometimes those conversations may not necessarily be what somebody wants to hear. It may be what somebody needs to hear. Mm-hmm. And those are two different things. And the need one, in some respects, as I said earlier, is more impactful. One of the things, David, I tell kids all the time, especially like those that are 10, 11, and 12, because when you're that age and you want to do what you want to do, and you want everybody to let you do what you want to do. I tell them all the time, if an adult lets you as a 10-year-old do what you want to do at 10, they don't really care about you. And so they'll look at me like, what do you mean? Well, do you have the capacity to make the decisions that an adult would be able to make? Like, no. So if an adult's going to let you do it, because if we let you do what you want to do, you'll stay up all night long and you won't go to school. Then you won't do this. You won't do that. You won't brush your teeth. You won't take a shower. If someone is not guiding you, well, it's the same thing with feedback and with counseling. If any counselor allows you to go down a road that he or she sees that's wrong, they don't really care about you.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I just sit here with a smirk because of some of the conversations that we have, and especially the young ladies, they definitely the ones that kind of give me the heat, because they're so sassy at a young age, and they say, "Oh, Mr. Glover, you're just doing too much. Y'all adults do too much." And I'm like, well, whatever. I said, would you rather me not do anything at all? I said, okay, how about this? For the next week or something, you do not come by my office or anything, and because I'm doing too much. Oh, no, Mr. Glover, I didn't mean it like that. Hey, you can't have it both ways.
That's exactly right.
I can be quiet and not do anything and just sit back and watch. No, I still want to talk to you.
That's absolutely. As we're talking, you bring up a lot of things that is said in conversation. But that's another thing. I said, okay, long as I'm talking, you're good. But if I get quiet, that's when you might have to start worrying. It's like, oh, he's not saying anything. He's not trying to guide me. He's not trying to chastise. He's not trying to direct me. Yeah, that's when you need to start worrying, when I ain't saying nothing. Like, I went running down that hallway and he didn't say stop running.
And that's so deep that you say that, because when you, like you said, when you don't talk, and then they come up, are you mad at me for something? I'm like, for what? And then they're like, because I seen you earlier and you wasn't your normal self. And then that's opportunities that you may be disappointed in you. I'm just, like, all the time we talk, and then you turn around and go do this. Like, I don't have nothing to say right now. Let's try again tomorrow or something. And they really take that to heart.
That's absolutely right. And, it's interesting that you said the word disappointed, because I tell kids all the time, look, now there's a difference between disappointed and angry. And they say, well, how so? What do you mean? Because when I'm angry with you, I'll get over that, momentarily. But if I'm disappointed, that's a little bit deeper. That means you let me down. That means I didn't expect that out of you and you let me down. So that's the difference between me being angry with you and disappointed with you. And see, this is my thing. And I just had this conversation the other day in terms of kind of similar to what you said earlier about the child that said, I don't remember a thing in history, but I remember our conversation. I was having this conversation and I understand our businesses, math, reading, social studies, science, phys ed, so forth and so on. But at the same time, there's at least a larger picture to me in education. And it's exactly what that young lady said to you, which was, I don't remember a thing from world history, but I remember those conversations I had with you.
Yeah, and that's it. And I always tell counterparts, because I'm the type that I just sit back and observe.
Right.
I not give them too much. I have a whole lot, and that's a whole other subject. I just think about a big meeting we had at one of the high schools I worked at, and it was a African American, I think he was an assistant superintendent, and the principal, which was a Caucasian male, said, "Oh, Mr. Glover, David, he's quiet," and the guy looked at me and said, he may be quiet. He has a lot to say.
Right.
He said, a quiet person has a lot to say. And I think that because I do have a lot to say, but sometimes I just don't openly share it, but unless I'm closer with a coworker, and I tell them all the time. We just somehow, some way, I know we're in a line of business with the academics.
Right.
It's such an imbalance with the social component.
Right.
It needs to be 50-50 somehow, because those skills right there is what makes you true leaders, when you have those social skills on track. And a lot of times people don't.
I could not agree with you more. As a matter of fact, in my school this year, we put a big intentional emphasis on social emotional. Because my belief is this: I believe in the long run, at some point, you'll get the academics if you can get the social emotional.
Exactly.
And that's a somewhat of a hard, and I get it. I mean, I get the assistant soups and the superintendents and the commissioners, and I get it. But at the same time, because like you said, our business is the academics, but I honestly, you will never get the academics if you don't have the social emotional.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense if you think about it.
No, it doesn't.
Sound in mind and body and stuff like that. How are you going to be able to think and process something with worried free?
Right.
Without having those components together, it just doesn't make sense at all.
No, it doesn't. And see, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, back to when you were talking about the critical thinking thing, in terms of how are you going to run a large organization when you can't run your house? It's along that same vein. How are you expecting little Johnny to get 2 + 2 = 4 when little Johnny just saw his mother get beat up before he came to school?
Yeah. You just, little Johnny is hungry, didn't eat.
Right.
It's so crazy to me that we haven't connected those pieces yet.
Right.
Keep going on and on, spending money this way, everywhere else. But
yes.
in the right places.
I'm in a school now where at one point we had gotten a grant for 3 years of $2 million additional per year for each of those 3 years. So that's $6 million over a 3-year period of time. The academics didn't change a bit. $6 million and academics didn't do nothing. I said that,
it's unfortunate.
Right, it is, but that just goes to show it's not a money issue per se. Because you didn't address back to what we were just saying a couple of minutes ago, the social emotional piece. The academics didn't move. So
you give me a lot to think about right now. That's why these conversations are important.
That's why it is.
When you put them out there and somebody else puts a different spin on it, and you say, well, the light bulb goes on, like, wow, that's another good point.
Right. So in terms of now, first off, education in general, now it's changing over as time goes by, but educational in general, this female dominant in terms of the number of employees. As a guidance counselor or working in guidance, do you find yourself kind of like the odd egg or the odd man out, so to speak, in terms of, are there many African-American male guidance counselors?
Actually, it's Madam, we have we have a big school district.
Right.
When I think of counseling, like when we have our big counseling yearly meetings,
Mm-hmm.
I think it may only be maybe out of 300-something counselors, it may only be like 10 of us, 15, no more than that. And I might be being a little lenient with 15, but I know as far as like department chair, like leadership,
right.
There's two of us.
That makes sense to me.
And then it was this other guy. He just became one this year. It was a couple other ones, but they kind of fell out. I'm just ultra competitive that I'm still hanging on. And then sometimes I think to myself, okay, I need to fall off too. But I just think the misrepresentation without having us in those roles, critical for kids. And this is off to another subject. I remember interviewing in a suburban district in Rochester, New York, and the coordinator of the program, I must have had like 3 or 4 interviews with her, and she actually told me they're the 8th biggest school district in New York State, and they didn't have one black male counselor at all. And I'm like, this to be a shoe-in for me to get a position. I didn't get it, needless to say. I said, that's just like a travesty that y'all don't have no black males in that component for kids.
But see, that it is so important from the standpoint of kids being able to see people who look like them in leadership roles. Or, I mean, even like I said, teaching in general is female dominant. I mean, it's rare that I even get male teachers, let alone male African American teachers. So when you start cutting it by gender and by race, the numbers get slimmer and slimmer. So I'm not surprised at what you're saying at all. That's why I even asked the question. Like for my school, my student assistance coordinator is an African-American male, but my guidance counselor is female, one of the best ones I've ever had. But historically, all of my guidance counselors have been female. And so that's why I asked you the question in terms of, okay, in Baltimore, do you find that you have that or you don't? Because it is critical. It's critical to me in education for kids to see males, period.
Yeah, it is. And I think the luxury I have, I remember one of my counterparts in the Niagara Falls School District when I was had got my certification in counseling. He said, believe it or not, you're going to be the golden child. He said, you're the golden child. He said, I wouldn't even worry about you getting the job. He said, because it's a rarity. This was a young white man who had told me that. He said, it's a rarity that you have a black male counselor. So
right.
Sooner or later, someone's going to get it, and they're going to offer you a job. You won't be a free agent for too long.
Right.
And which he was true. I was sought after heavily by Baltimore County. I think when I'm working with counterparts, they kind of look at it as we have a good balance because they say, they're the more... maybe the female's more nurturing, the mommy type role, and me, I'm kind of quiet, low key, but as one of my other supervisors used to call me the Velvet Hammer. It's just like that he's soft. He knows what to say to kids, but yet and still he could be hard, so they nicknamed me the Velvet Hammer.
I like that one, the Velvet Hammer. That's right. So I'm looking here, I'm still in your bio, and I'm looking back here where it says that the book actually evokes emotions. It says, going back to Lady Jazz, she says, Cocktail Conversations is by far an enjoyable reading, causes readers to feel a myriad of emotions, from sadness to anger to disgust to laughter to celebration. Now, was that by design, or is this, again, back to poking the bear?
It's poking the bear, but some of the situations I think hit home.
Right.
Like you don't think about because I did. I had a blog talk show with Lady Jazz on her network for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And sometimes she nicknamed me also. She said I was the Black Jerry Springer because people would call in and they would like really go at it back and forth based on what other people says. And the one thing I always say to them, just because what we got to get out of. We're used to dealing with the same people, maybe living in the same, communities and things like that. But just because we think one way doesn't mean someone in California
right.
or Texas relate to our situation. So when someone else says something that may seem outlandish to you, doesn't mean they're wrong.
Right.
That's different. They have different perceptions and perspectives on things, and people need to understand that. There's a lot of everything isn't black and white. There's a lot of gray areas with situations.
No, you're and we're coming down near the end, but we could go on because exactly what you said is what I was saying in terms of all this going on in the country. And I said, now look, folks don't sleep on this. The fact that Trump was able to get into the presidency means there are more people in the country who think like him than we might believe. Mm-hmm. Don't just say, okay, there's the numbers, and now we may not know who they are, but they're obviously, for him to be able to get where he's gotten and to do what he's doing and to be able to still do what he does and is still accepted by many means there's more in this country than we may think who thinks like he thinks.
And and when you relate it to education, that's, when you say there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Right.
There's people who's thinking the same thing that somebody else. A great deal of people say that was stupid, but there's a lot of people sitting back and say, actually, I had the same question.
That's absolutely right.
But I just didn't say anything.
I ain't say anything.
The same thing with the campaign. There's a lot of people feel that way. They just haven't came out and voiced you, but when they went to that polls,
right,
they clicked on his name.
Right. That's absolutely right. And back to the kid or the student in the classroom, that's exactly what, most of us as educators will tell kids. Look, ask the question. And 9 times out of 10, there is somebody else sitting in that class that was wondering the same thing, but they just was afraid to ask too. Mm-hmm. So it really is. But this is, again, back to why blogs like yours, mine, your controversial, your book and everything, this is why it's important for folks to I just think sometimes we can go along like sheep or a herd and just with our everyday lives, everything being so busy that we just don't take the time to pause, to stop, to recognize some of the things that's going on that may be like, wait a minute, that's absurd. Wait a minute, I didn't even realize all that was going on. That doesn't make sense. But because we're so busy and moving so fast, we don't even recognize it. That's why I like the fact that your book now brings out some things that causes people to pause. That's what I do with my blog. That's what we do with the radio shows. That's what you do with your counseling. Like, stop and think for a minute. We're moving so fast that we really don't stop to just kind of think about some of these things that we're doing, seeing, or going through.
Yeah, so true. And I definitely, you have me thinking right now. My wheels are always spinning, but they're spinning more now. Just having this conversation with you, and sometimes that's unique when you able to collaborate with someone,
right?
Be able to chop it up, as they say.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, sometimes like I'll get with some of the kids on, I'll just say, stop. Does this make sense to you? Like before, look, don't make another step. Don't make another move. Does that make sense to you? And they'll say no. Okay, then why are you doing it? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? But the first step is at least you acknowledge that it doesn't make sense to you. So at that point, we can move on into the discussion from that point. If it does make sense to you, then help me understand why. Help me understand the sense in it. Now, if it doesn't make sense, then you got to help me understand that too. But that's where, like a lot of times when I'm working with the teachers, especially the math teacher, but no, it works for language arts too. When the child gives the wrong answer, I always tell them, wait a minute, don't shut them down. Listen to their thought process as to how they got there. Like, how did you get to that answer? Because sometimes hearing how somebody got to the wrong answer is more valuable than someone who got the answer right.
True. Yeah, because sometimes you don't even know how that person got the right answer.
Right.
When you listen how they got to the wrong answer, then that's when the learning could begin, because you're like, wait a minute, let's go back here. This is
right.
where you made your mistake right here. And once you messed up right there. There was no going back. It was no way that you would come up with the right answer.
Right. And see, a lot of times what teachers will do is they'll just like, that was wrong, and they blow it off. And I go back and I say, wait, give them a chance to explain how they got there. And you're absolutely right, because you will not find out where the misstep was if you don't do that. And that's what a lot of times I'll throw, like, I like the poking the bear thing. I like that. A lot of times we'll just throw things out there just to make you, okay, just reflect a little bit. Does it make sense to you? Did you ever think of it this way? Did you look at it like that? They're like going back to the example of the ripped jeans. If you're an African American, do you understand why you might not want to support that style? I'm not saying, because see, people will get mad. Oh, you just want me to. No, I'm just trying to help you understand why you might not want to support that based on our history. I mean, you talk about, when I go down that road, it's like the N word and all that. I said, look, based on the history, for me personally, there is no different spelling. It is no cute. It is no this, that, and the other. But for some, they'll make the counter argument. Well, we've taken ownership of the word, so therefore we can use it like we want. So I'm like, okay, fine. But again, I try to help people understand, okay, let's think historically of how the word was used, what was the context, what was the meaning, so forth and so on. That's all I'm asking you to do, is stop and give it the test of, okay, you know what, I can see that side. I may not agree with it, but I can see it.
Yeah, that is power into, you just had me thinking, like, when you go back and you have people retract their steps, and a lot of times I have that with students when they have in disagreement with a teacher, and
right.
I tell a student, well, this was the first mistake. When you said that, that's when it went all downhill.
Right.
You think if you would have answered or responded back differently, you would have had a different outcome. And they think about it. Yeah, I probably could have said something else. Then I always give them a thought situation.
Right.
Just imagine if someone said, the assistant principal said this about Mr. Glover. I said, do you think I'm going to go automatically and just approach him? I might be feeling like it, but I'm just going to sit back.
Right.
I said, eventually it'll come to it, but I'm not going to react because every time someone says this or that or go through by the he say, she say stuff, and they're like, yeah, you're right. But, that's working. That's a yearly work in progress with middle school kids.
Well, it is, because usually the response I get for anything is done is because I got mad. And my response back to that is, well, do you not think I don't get mad? Do you think, I said, man, do you like you just said, you kind of put it in the adult situation. I was like, what if every time I got mad, I turned my desk over, tore my office up, I went in somebody's classroom and stuff? Could I do that? No. Well, why are you able to do it? I get mad just like you do, because you're absolutely right. Those are the kind of things that kind of push. Again, the whole thing we're talking about this morning, folks, my guest has been David Glover. We're talking about his book, the Cocktail Conversations. He's also known as the controversial counselor, as well as the Velvet Hammer. And but it's been a wonderful conversation, because what both of us are really trying to get at through what we're doing is just to challenge people to consider and to think. Doesn't necessarily have to be to agree, but the hope is, like, after you think about this, maybe you'll kind of get a different point of view. Or, worst come to worst, at least be able to defend your point of view. That's what we're doing. The book is Cocktail Conversations. David, when I get down to the interview, what I do is I shut the mic off and I give my guest the opportunity to promote in any way he or she would like, with the exception of saying the dollar amount. Anything short of a price or a dollar amount, you're free to do. Shout out, websites, telephone numbers, anything you'd like to do other than the dollar amount. So I'm going to turn the mic off and allow you to do that. You get a chance to, as you said, reach out to another platform, promote, whatever it is you'd like to do other than the price. So I'm turning the mic off now.
Okay. All right. So if you've been enjoying the conversation as much as I've enjoyed Cocktail Conversations, I have the revised edition. You can find it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. But if you want a signed copy, you can get it from me. You can follow me on any social media platform. Facebook, David Glover, put in controversial counselor, I'll pop up. Instagram, same thing, David Glover. Then you just put in search controversial counselor, it all come up. I can give you the actual www stuff, but I'm just trying to make it easy for you. LinkedIn, I'm on there as well. So you check me out on those platforms or request me as a friend or follow me. And also you can, just messaging me. You can get your own personal copy, and I'll sign it, and we can go from there. Also, like I said, I do Facebook Live and different things like that. My webpage is www.controversialcounselor.com. So just check me out, drop me a line, and go from there. If you're interested in me having one of these cocktail conversations with you at an event, hit me up. I'm more game for it. Like I told Mark at the beginning, I just want to get the word out there and have my opportunity to bring my knowledge to any different platform. So that's kind of where I'm at. So make sure you follow me or request me as a friend, and let's go from there and let's start having these genuine, authentic conversations.
I know that's right. Well, I tell you what, I thank you for rising early. I don't know if you're an early morning person or not, but if you are, well, then you're normally up at this hour. But if you're not, I thank you for rising early with me and joining me for another reading circle. Had a wonderful time with the conversation. Every now and again, I get to the Baltimore area, so next time I'm heading that way, I'll have to, hit you up on LinkedIn or one of the others and let you know I'll be in town. Maybe we can hook up. But,
sounds good to me.
But for sure, enjoy the conversation. Again, listening audience, we're really challenging folks. Like you said, we're not portraying or trying to be the expert. We're just trying to poke the bear. We're just trying to throw some things out there and kind of let you decide. So that's what we're all about. Again, his website is controversialcounselor.com. You go there, you can find him, and I'll check you out on Instagram and all those platforms as well. I know we're already linked in together. I think I hit you up on Facebook the other day. I'm not sure, but if not, I'll get on all the sites before it's over. But had a wonderful. Is the book down? Is it in ebook form too? Is it downloadable? Because I know you said Amazon. Is it also downloadable?
Yes, it's downloadable.
It's Kindle. It's in Kindle version. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that being said, I will probably download it sometime in the next couple of days. And start reading some of those conversations myself.
And I'm going to send you a hard copy. Our situation kind of happened quickly. I would have sent you out a hard copy.
No. Listen, we started talking earlier in the week, and then we on air today. So, so it did happen very quickly, and I'm appreciative of it. So, all right, with that being said, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday season as we head into the Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa seasons. And then before you know it, we're in 2019. So we will be in touch. I do record the show. If everything came out like it's supposed to, I will email the link to you. And also it'll be up on my YouTube channel. So you can do anything you want with it once you get it. It's yours. I had a blast talking with you.
Same here, brother. I appreciate you.
All right. Same here. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Take care. Have a good holiday season.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.
All right. Take care. Well, that ends another reading circle with your host, Marc Medley. That was my guest, David Glover. And his book is Cocktail Conversations, and he's also known as the Controversial Counselor.